what I'd like to do here is demonstrate how Avatar promoted Richard Dawkins' framework over E O Wilson's framework with regards to a evolution. And so let's look at what Richard Dawkins' framework is, and it basically focuses on the selfish gene, and whereas the framework that E O Wilson it focuses a lot more on sociability. So he talks about the fact that there's other components. There's biological, social, and environmental components, but that affect the evolution of species. And so but now let's kind of break Dawkins down. The idea of the selfish gene gives you kind of it's a zero sum, that the concept, whereas E O Wilson's concept is more of a multi-layer, and multicolored concept. Dawkins, again, his concept also is very hierarchical, whereas E O Wilson's concept is a much more a relational, which really relates an awful lot to the idea of multi-layer as a relational concept. And the Dawkins, again, focuses on the competitive. It's a lot is, it's the competition, for the genetic competition for a winner. And E O Wilson talks about, that there's an awful lot of cooperation. And so it's a cooperative issue on the multi-layers. Back to Dawkins, we get, there's a real focus is that there is a single best practice win here. And whereas the what works is kind of what really falls out of E O Wilson's kind of a multi-layer relational model. So if I would take a little thing here, the E O Wilson's is a lot more gooey, right? But it is, I think, more realistic to the world. I think the world is very relational, and we really have to keep an awful lot of balls up in the air, and rather than just one. Now, let me jump off here and talk about Lakoff. Now, Lakoff says that lives of individuals are significantly influenced by the central metaphors they use to explain complex phenomena. So which of these metaphors are we going to use? Are we going to use the metaphor that comes out of Dawkins? That's, basically it's the meme DNA is associated with zero sum hierarchy, competitive and best practice. And you can see that in some of our things like our fairy tales, where you have Cinderella and Snow White and Sleeping Beauty. They're all damsels in distress with a hero that comes along and saves them. So it's inside of the of our DNA, and inside the red pill, if you will. And so let's look at this. What I'm saying is that we as individuals have this worldview, and our worldview contains how we think the world ought to be and how we think the world is. And there's question even as to whether we get how the world is right. There's a story about the frog that was being analyzed by a vocal scientist, and they hit him on the back and said jump, and with 4 appendages he did 20, and then 3, 15, and then 2, 10, and then 5. And then when he had no appendages left, because they were vocal scientists, they said that he basically demonstrated that he was deaf. So there is some influence in bias that comes in there. And that's very important because it affects the way our values and the way our policies will all be developed. And it blinds us to many things. And let's look at Avatar now. And the Avatar came up with this. It has this the colonel and the administrator are the two kind of lead males, if you will, in the Avatar world. But they're the Americans or the humans they are, and they swallowed the red pill, and so they're on this planet and they're trying to get this material that will save humankind. But the planet is really more of a Gaia type of planet, and it has this where it's really all interconnected, and it's interconnected. And one of the main features of the interconnectivity is the big tree. So let's see what would be different if we were actually use the meme or the DNA, or create, say, a blue pill that was based on the concepts of E O Wilson. All right. So if we said that the fairy tales, rather than be focused on the concept of competition, they're focused on the concept of cooperation. And I would like to argue that cooperation actually needs competition first. So it's not like they're ignore or ignorant of what competition is all about. But if we were to change this to the blue pill, all right? And what would happen is that if we had cooperation, multi-layered, relational, and what works, and what I would argue is that basically what would happen is that the planet would cooperate with the people, and the kernel wouldn't have to go and blow the tree up, and the planet would never, a Gaia type planet would never bring all of its species together to fight against another species that it knew was a competitive species. I mean, it just, that doesn't make any sense to me. And then, of course, we wouldn't have the single savior, wouldn't be a hero that was a hero associated with the human species to begin with, and not someone native to the planet. So I think that he missed the boat of what Gaia is about.